Huskies have faced the Huskers 3 times since 2010. How would Washington face against Nebraska and the rest of the Big Ten going forward? Welcome to the Voice of College Football and our series in which we look at teams that are being rumored to other conferences and how they would fare versus those conferences going forward. And we start by looking at the past. Washington against the Big Ten, and this Husky program has been mighty up and down over the last 20-plus seasons as we check out the records against the Big Ten going back to the year 2000. A mighty fine season for Washington football as Marcus Tuiasosopo led a Rose Bowl victory and a top 3 finish against Purdue and Drew Brees. But let's look at the more recent results, Huskies versus the Big Ten. Washington finished 11-2 and in the top 10 in the country in 2022. Interestingly enough, at the point in which they faced Michigan State, the roles were reversed. Michigan State was coming off a top 10 season and was ranked number 11 in the country, but they fell to a 5-7 finish. Huskies dominated that game even more so than the final score, 39-28, as Michael Penix tore up Sparty. These two teams get back together in 2023 in East Lansing. 2021, that Washington team only won 4 games. They were putrid on offense. They only scored 10 in Ann Arbor, losing to a playoff-bound Michigan team 31-10. In 2018, of course, Washington won the Pac-12 championship, faced Ohio State in the Rose Bowl, had a hurried comeback in the final minutes after falling way behind against the Buckeyes 28-3, could not complete the comeback and lost to Urban Meyer in his final game in college football. Buckeyes won the Rose Bowl. In 2016 and 17, Washington took on overmatched Rutgers teams, both in Piscataway and in Seattle. They won 30-14 and 48-13, and that Washington team in 2016 was the last Pac-12 team to make it to a college football playoff. And in that second season of 2017, the Huskies faced a second Big Ten team as they marched on to the Fiesta Bowl. And in a New Year's Six matchup against Saquon Barkley and Trace McSorley, Penn State won a thriller 35-28. In 2013 and 14, there was a home-and-home series between the Huskies and the Illini. Washington won both of these games 34-24 in Chicago and 44-19 in Seattle. Then look at this interesting series against Nebraska. In 2011, Washington lost this game against the 9-4 Nebraska team 51-38. In 2010, Nebraska and Washington had one of those rare 2 games played against the same opponent in the same season. They had a regularly scheduled game early in 2010, and Nebraska mopped the floor with the Huskies 56-21, a Nebraska team that eventually finished at 10-4, and their 4th loss was in the Holiday Bowl as the Huskies avenged the earlier 5-touchdown defeat, winning 19-7 as a 2-touchdown underdog in the 2010 Holiday Bowl. In 2007, Washington down at 4-9. They played an Ohio State team that eventually won the Big Ten championship and went to the BCS championship game against LSU. Huskies lost by 19, and they also lost by 19 to the Buckeyes 4 years earlier in Columbus, and that Ohio State team finished in the top 5 in the nation at 11-2. In 2002, it was Michigan-Washington, and the Wolverines won it 31-29. That Michigan team finished at 10-3. And Washington also had a very non-traditional 2-game matchup against Purdue in 2000 and also in 2002, the aforementioned Rose Bowl game against Drew Brees. Huskies had a great football team that year. They finished 11-1, won the Rose Bowl by 10 points in a game that really wasn't necessarily that close in the fourth quarter. But Purdue came back 2 years later and won a Sun Bowl matchup by the same score. And that Boiler team came into that matchup at 6-6. There you see the 2001 game against Michigan. If you add it all up, Washington 8-9 against the Big Ten since the year 2000, 2-3 in bowl games. Now, these Big Ten teams that Washington faced during this 23-year stretch won 141 games against 78 losses. So they won about 63-64% of their games. Washington at 138-82. So these Washington teams, if you add up all the records, very comparable against the Big Ten teams that they matched, so it would make sense that they went generally 500 at 8-9. The point differential for all these games, 17 games, Washington outscored by the Big Ten by just 7 points. So they basically played even throughout all these games. But against the Big Ten teams that eventually finished ranked in the top 25, Washington just 3-8. Therefore, they went 5-1 against the unranked Big Ten teams. Really an odd 2 decades of Washington football, as they have been so up and down. They started this stretch really strong, number 3 in the country after the Rose Bowl win we talked about against Purdue. Then a mighty difficult stretch under Jim Lambright and also Ty Willingham, where this team bottomed out. They actually went 0-12 one season, and between 2004 and 2008, Washington football at 12-47, and they went 6-37 in the Pac-12. So that has really weighted down a team that, of course, was taken over by Chris Peterson, who brought them back to near elite level as they went to a Rose Bowl in 2018, a Fiesta Bowl in 17, also a college football playoff appearance in 16. And all told, Washington's been pretty marginal again, weighted down by that 59-game stretch of only winning 12 games over the course of 5 seasons. Put it all together in Washington at 152-130 and dead even, 98-98 in the Pac-12. I came into this exercise, of course, knowing how Washington plays from year to year and what the history is, but I actually had them a bit overestimated as maybe a Wisconsin, possibly an Iowa. But if you really look at it, it's more like a Michigan State run, where Mark D'Antonio has been able to squeeze out college football playoff appearances, Rose Bowls, Cotton Bowls, but that's Michigan State at its very best. There's also some dismal times for Michigan State football, but Washington has been even better than Michigan State on more occasions. However, could Michigan State finish 0-12 and then have a bunch of 3-4 win seasons? So Washington's been all over the place, but if you add it all up, I'm going to go Washington, the equivalent of Michigan State. We know that the University of Washington has applied for membership to the Big Ten. Will they receive that entry into the Big Ten? We don't know. We've discussed it many times. Check out the videos. But we are matching up potential members of future conferences. Check out USC, UCLA against the Big Ten. Also Oklahoma, Texas against the SEC. And then also some speculation here with Oregon. It's just a fun exercise against the Big Ten. And now Washington against the Big Ten. We'll continue the series right here at the Voice of College Football.